Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to Canterbury Holston Park RSL Club for Morning Memoirs today. Our special guest is the irreverent, irrepressible and irresistible Carlotta.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Kristian.
Well, good morning. Nice to see so many of you here today. Welcome along to Canterbury Holston Park RSL Club for Morning Memoirs today. Today is a special day for many reasons. Not for the one that you're probably thinking of, being an anniversary of a certain event, but it's sort of an anniversary for me today. Today is our 6-month anniversary of starting Morning Memoirs, and they said it wouldn't last. And also, I have some very good news that I'm proud to be able to tell you. For those of you who've been coming along since our first guest, Stuart Wagstaff, back in April, the good news is that the club is so happy with the way the show is going and so happy with your response and the feedback that they've been getting from you, that as of January next year, we will go twice a month, on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month. We'll let you know who the guests are going to be for January, February and March in the next few weeks. Keep an eye on your chevrons and you'll find out who our guests are going to be in the coming months. We've got some very exciting people coming up. Next month, Tony Lamond. In November, Little Patty, fresh from her tour of Long Way to the Top. And in December, Lucky Grills will be with us. Some merriment and some comedy for Christmas, all right? But today, our special guest. Look, today, of course, being September the 11th, we knew when we were putting today's show together, looking at the schedule, that today is the second Wednesday of September, fell on the anniversary of the dreadful events of last year. And I don't know about you, but I'm already sick and tired of seeing it played on television over and over and over and over and over again. I watched that special last night in memoriam, which was very, very good, but it was just so depressing. And I knew that would be happening with press all over the world today. So I wanted to make sure that for at least an hour and a half on this day, we could smile and have some laughs. And remember that life isn't all bad and isn't all full of doom and gloom, and that there are some wonderful things to be very happy about, including our special guest today. A disclaimer at the top of the show. If there is anybody here who is under 18 years of age, or who may be offended by frontal nudity. You're not, mate. Yes. Bring it on. Well, we'll see what we can do about that, all right? I just wanted to say that today's show could be somewhat adult in content, so be prepared, all right? Ladies and gentlemen, our very special guest today is well known for her many appearances throughout live venues throughout Australia over the past 30 years, and also for the last 6 years, she's been one of the featured beauties on Beauty and the Beast. So she is indeed officially beautiful. Before we bring her out, let's have a look at the life of the colourful, candid, capable, and captivating Carlotta.
I can wash out 44 pairs of socks and have them hanging on the line. I can starch and iron 2 dozen shirts before you can count from 1 to 9. I can scoop up a great big dipper full of lard from the drippings can.
If I really showed you, darling, that hair of yours would stand up on end.
'Cause I'm a woman, W-O-M-A, yeah.
36, 24, 36, 9.5.
I can rub and scrub this old house until it's shining like a dime. Be my baby, grease the car and powder my face at the same time. Get all dressed up, go out and swing to 4 a.m. and then lay down at 5, jump up at 6 and start all over again. I am a woman, W-O-M-A.
Let's face it, I was born a boy and that's the way it is. Well, I guess I had never seen a boy with tits.
If you come to me sickly, you know I'm gonna make you well.
If you come to me hitched up, you know I'm gonna break the spell. You know, if you come to me...
I beg your pardon.
Well, just see...
Dare you,
Well,
you
just see-
little frump.
Yeah.
Mongrel.
'Cause I'm a woman, W-O-M-A-N. I'll say it again. Oh, I'm a woman,
You bring me a loose woman.
Well, I just said to see who you're bringing home at night.
I can stretch a greenback dollar bill from here to Kingdom Come. I can play the numbers, pay my bills, and still end up with some. I got a $20 gold piece, says there's nothing I can't do. I can make a dress out of a feedback and make a man out of you. 'Cause I am a woman, and I'm a soul winner. I said, well, now shut up.
If he wants to go around the house farting, let him. I mean... I said, when I die, I always said to God, if God's there, I'm going to say thank you, but get it really right next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, she is the legend of lay girls. She is the boss of the cross. She is the queen of queens and the diva of drag. Please welcome Carlotta. Oh, yes. She's here live and in person today.
It's so bloody early in the morning. I'm usually getting home from the bourbon and beef at this time.
I thought you'd be used to early mornings getting up doing all the television work.
I think I had to go to bed so early last night. I thought, oh my God. And I couldn't wear my eyelashes this morning because my eyes are still watering, so you're seeing me plain.
You could never be plain, Carlotta. I don't think that's not an adjective I would put when I was trying to describe you. Now listen, before we start today, we're going to go through your life story. And a lot of the information...
God, have we got all day?
And a lot of the information I've gotten is from your first book called He Did It Her Way, which we'll talk about along the way. And you've got a new book coming out as well, and we'll talk about that. But anybody that's seen Carlotta on, whether it be on Beauty and the Beast or in the live shows you do, will know that... How do I put this politely? That I wouldn't want to trade quips with you. Let's put it that way.
Why? Why are people scared of me?
I don't...
Just a Balmain boy.
Well, look, I've had double my normal dose of Prozac in order to be able to cope with this morning, so...
I had a Viagra last night, nothing's worked.
It started! So, all I wanted to say before we begin with is, Carol,
Yes?
be gentle with me.
I will.
Right.
I'm always gentle with cute boys.
Oh, I love that. You can come back again. All right, let's start with the photo of Carlotta before you were Carlotta and have a little look at that, shall we? I've noticed in... there we are. There we are. Now, look, I noticed in doing the research for this, I've watched a couple of different interviews and read stuff in your book. In one interview...
My godfather.
In one interview, you say that your boy's name was Byron. In another interview, you say it was Ricky. And in another, you say it's a closely guarded secret and I'm not telling anyone. So which is it?
It was Richard. Who gives a shit?
Okay, it was Richard. You heard it first at Morning Memoirs. Okay, fine. No, I just want to... Now, you say in the book your earliest memory was at 5 when you realised that you weren't like other kids in that you didn't have a father figure around.
No, I didn't have a father figure. My father got killed during the last war. Towards the end of the war, I was born in 43. Yes, I was 59 last Monday. I missed having a father figure, but I had a lot of uncles and a lot of my mother's boyfriends around at the time, so it was good.
Your mother worked at the Red Cross during the war, is that right?
Yeah, she worked at the Red Cross. She was a ballroom dancer, actually. I think that's where, because I've looked through the family tree, and my mother comes from a big family of, I think there was 11 or 12 in her family, and none of them were in show business, so I didn't know where I got this flair from. So it must have been because she was... actually, my mother was a great girlfriend of one of the original beauties on the original Beauty and the Beast, Pat Furman. And they used to flat together at Bondi, and they used to dance at the old Trocadero.
Amazing how life goes round in circles, isn't
where
it?
they picked up the sailors. That's where I was conceived.
Did you ever find out the name of your father or know who he was?
No, I don't know who he is. We did a show on Beauty and the Beast with Stan Samanik, who I don't miss. But someone rang up and they said that we didn't know whether it was a prank or something. The girls got all excited upstairs. They came down and they said, "Oh, your father was on the phone." I said, "What's he come back?" So we don't know, and I won't know. My mother doesn't talk about it. I accept that. That's her problem. Look, I'm 59 now. It doesn't matter. You know, I would like to know who he is, but I think he produced something special.
All right, your early years, though, weren't necessarily spent totally with your mum. You lived with your Auntie Hazel, didn't you, and her family?
Well, my mother was a single woman and she was very young when she had me. I take my hat off to her because she supported me all her life. She still does. She supports me tremendously. She hasn't been well. She just got out of hospital again, but she's getting better. And I must say that she was in that position where she had to go out and work. And I was brought up by a wonderful woman called Auntie Hazel who brought me up till I was 11. And when my mother remarried, and then my mother took me back.
And I've got another photo here of your early years, actually. You talk in the book about it being very happy, about it being very happy times.
Where'd you get these shots?
Oh, look,
the archives?
I have my sources.
I love that dinky.
Oh, the double entendres are going to be flying today, I've got a feeling. Yes, that was your dinky.
My dinky.
That's what I said. I said dinky.
I thought you said something else.
No,
I lost that.
No, trust me. I want to work here again. You talk about them being very happy times. That time you spent with Auntie Hazel, it was almost like a family environment for you, wasn't it?
Well, it was because she had a big family, and I grew up like any normal kid. I had a wonderful childhood. I swam with Dawn Fraser at Balmain. She swam like a bloke, and I ended up dressing like a woman. But anyway, that's another story. Well, it's the truth. I'd dive in the pool and she'd be up the other bloody end. I think she had a cracker up her ass, that girl, I tell you, the way she swam.
Right, okay.
Is this too rude for
no,
this hour of the morning?
No, it's wonderful. I'm loving every minute of it.
I told you not to get me straight from the bourbon.
Now, you mentioned about your mother announcing her engagement, and Hazel actually objected to that, didn't she? She wasn't very happy about it.
What wasn't she happy about? Sorry.
Your mother's engagement.
My mother's engagement? No. That's a personal...
Not the one that didn't happen, but the one before the one that happened.
The original, my mother met someone who was from Malaysia. He was a sea captain. My mum was a good sort. Oh, bloody good sort, I tell you. She mesmerised me as a kid. She always looked like Elizabeth Taylor to me. Not
blonde?
now.
Blonde?
No, she was brunette, dark, but very beautiful and had the most fabulous legs. And
you obviously inherited them.
Oh, no. Not as good as hers.
So you ended up going back to live with your mum, and as you said, she remarried, and your stepfather was a strict Catholic, is that right?
No, I was brought up as a strict Catholic. from my godmother.
Ah, right, okay.
Which is Auntie Chrissy, and she brought me up in the Catholic faith, and I went to Christian Brothers School, and then I got the sack from the church because I wouldn't kiss the statues. Well, they were dusty.
I was actually heading towards, I want you to tell everybody about what happened when you got the strapping from the Christian Brothers and with your stepfather.
Well, I was training to be an altar boy. That was my first thing in drag. Was all that lace. But half those priests were pissed all the time because every time I went to pour them the wine, they'd dip my elbow like that. And I was a bit of a bugger of a kid because I was a cheeky bugger because I was from Balmain, and anyone from Balmain, we grew up sensible. We grew up, we used to call boys that were a bit different sissies. I used to play footy. Don't know how the friggin' hell I turned out like this, but anyway. And I just had a wonderful time. But at the Christian Brothers, I mucked up one day, and they gave me what they call the strap. And my stepfather I wouldn't eat my dinner that night because my hands were swollen. And my father went down there, knocked the brother out, and then I went to a public school.
So that was the end of your Catholic education
That
then?
was.
Right, fair enough. And you weren't a bad fighter either, though, yourself. You were capable of
Well, you had to in
out.
Balmain. You had to learn to look after yourself.
And you did?
I did. I still do.
So watch it.
You heard about the Ricky Ponting episode, did you? Not true. Anyway.
Did you notice that was one of the questions I actually didn't put in here?
Sorry.
So I'm so pleased you brought it up because I wasn't game to.
No,
All right.
it's not true.
You left school at 15 and you got a job in David Jones, in the art department at David Jones. And this was sort of your real introduction to the whole camp scene because there was a lot of queens working at David Jones in the art department, still are. And and this is where you sort of really first came in contact.
I'd never seen so many men walk with mints.
As a David Jones?
Oh, they just walk, they're mincy. And I never saw that in Balmain. And it was a sort of shock to my... I just didn't know what was happening because I was a very naive kid.
But you say in the book too that you felt accepted almost there. That you felt happy working there because you had been picked on a bit at school, and this was a situation where you were allowed to be you.
The reason I got picked on at school was because I was feminine looking, and I didn't understand all that at that time. But when I went to David Jones and I met gay people and I got introduced to that world, and they were so nice to me, and I was so totally relaxed, and I always was very good at art. So I went straight into the art department, and I used to paint I wasn't a window dresser. I used to paint most of the sceneries for the backgrounds, and then I did it as Mark Foy's as well.
And you one night went to the Rex Hotel and met two people named Lorraine Campbell-Craig and Electra.
That's right. I went to a party at King's Cross in Potts Point.
And Electra said to you, you'd look fantastic in drag. This was the first time somebody said to you.
Yes, Electra said to me, you'd look fantastic in drag. And I didn't know that she was a drag queen. I just thought it was a glamorous woman with a deep voice.
So you
have been studying, haven't
Oh,
you?
yes. Oh, yeah. And so you ran away from home at 16, and you kept in touch with your mum by phone, but didn't necessarily sort of see a hell of a lot of her. And it was around this time, because of the social scene you were hanging out with. You started dressing up, but it was more of a fancy dress or a fun thing at first for you, wasn't it?
Well, it was a fun thing. I mean, we used to have there was a wonderful place out this way. I think where the old brickworks are down here. Where they used to be. It was called Wiley Hall. And we used to go to, they used to sneak me into the back of the Rex Hotel when I was very young to have a little drinky poo. And, of course, then we'd run home because they'd say there was a party on at Wiley Hall, and we'd all dress up and go to these parties.
And it was a very fun time.
Well, it was a fun time. It was also a frightening time because the police had raided, because it was sort of not accepted in those days. And
Was it illegal?
Well, it wasn't actually illegal because I fought that system many years later, well, about 4 or 5 years later, that I got picked up one night because I was in the attire, and they took me to court, and the charge was offensive behaviour. And I said, what's the offensive behaviour? And the judge said, you're dressed as a woman. I said, well, you've got a wig and a robe on. What's the difference?
Oh, yeah. Pay that one. Tell us the story about the day you went to the Regent Cinema in drag.
The what?
The Regent Cinema in drag.
Well, that was hysterical because I had a very dear friend where we used to get dressed up, climb out the back of her mum's window, and then we'd chuck ourselves off to the movies because we wanted to say, like, no one would pick us of a daytime being dressed up. And so we went to the old Regent Theatre, and of course we could only get tickets upstairs, and we went upstairs, and I wasn't very good in high heels in those days. And so I fell down the stairs of the mezzanine up the top, and my wig fell off and hit some bloke underneath sitting down watching the movie. And there I was sitting there with a big frock on and a crew cut. And
It's a
punk
good look.
wasn't even in then.
Well, whether it was from male or female persons, you certainly always caught people's eye because you always looked very, very glam, as this shot shows. This is taken of you in the 60s, looking very glam. Now, the name Carlotta was given to you by Lee Gordon. You remember Lee Gordon? Tell us how that whole meeting with Lee came about and how he named you Carlotta.
Well, in the early days, we used to hang around like the Rex Hotel, and there was a wonderful coffee shop called the Cashmere, which very famous. She was supposed to have been a witch, but she was a famous artist. She painted these devil pictures and everything, and her name was Rosalind Norton. And we'd all go into these coffee shops at night. And I was in the coffee shop one night and I met Lee Gordon. And he was going out with a wonderful showgirl from the Latin Quarter called Eileen Gordon. And he came up to me at the coffee shop and he said, "You'd look fantastic on stage." He said, "I've got this idea of putting a review together that I saw in Paris." And that was my introduction to Lee Gordon, who I thought was, unfortunately he's not alive today, but I thought he was the best entrepreneur that Australia ever produced, and one that never ripped you off. He bought out Chubby Checker and opened a place in Goulburn Street called the Peppermint Twist Lounge. And of course I'd always learnt dancing as a kid. I'd learnt tap dancing, and I'd learnt dancing, and I was very good at the twist. And I mean, actually, I started doing the twist at Mark Foy's because I was still working at Mark Foy's, doing the shows at night at the Rheinschloss, and then also I had 3 jobs. I was hairdressing as well at the Rex Hotel. So I was very busy. And he said, "I've got this Chubby Checker coming out." And he had a show at they didn't have entertainment centre then, it was called the Stadium in Rushcutters Bay. It's where I first saw Betty Hutton, and I just fell in love. I thought she was a great act. And he put the and he ran a competition for people to go in a twist competition, but it was his sense of humour. He said, "I want you to go out and do it in drag, and I want you to go out and do it as a boy." And so I did the both, and when Chubby Checker came up and said, "Who's that one that won it as a girl?" And I was back dressed as a boy, and I said, "Me." And he never spoke to me again.
So, and you won the boy one as well. You won both of them, didn't you?
I won both of them.
That's one way to get a prize, isn't it? All right. Now, Lee Gordon was also introduced you to Sheila Cruz, who ended up being the choreographer at Les Girls.
I met Sheila Cruz. Well, what happened was, unfortunately, after Rheinschloss closed, we went to a place called the Jewel Box. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was hysterical because you had to go through a hamburger place, walk up the back of the stairs to go into this little nightclub at the back. And you had to they'd come in and they'd have cartons of beer on there. Well, I don't think they were cartons. I can't remember. They had big bottles of beer in those days. And they'd bring all their own booze and that in because they weren't licensed. And we used to do the shows there. And unfortunately, Lee died. And Sammy Lee, who had the Latin Quarter, and Reg Boom, had come up with the concept of doing a big drag show, because they were building a building across the road, which used to be a paddock on the corner of Roslyn Street, which became Lay Girls Building. And they came in and were picking drag queens to do the show. And Sammy Lee didn't want me at first, because I was a brunette, as you could see. He wanted all blondes. And Reg Boom just said, no, she's, I hate saying this, but she said, she's just too gorgeous. We've got to have her. So that's how I started at Lay Girls.
We've got a photo here of Sammy Lee because he was an influential figure for you very much. Just as a matter of interest, just put the house lights up for us for a second, Michael. Over the years, by a show of hands, how many of you went to Lay Girls? Just about all of the audience. I think it was an Australian institution.
It was an institution. Unfortunately, when Sammy died, because Sammy was a very professional man, I had my fights with him over the years, as you can read in my book, like when I went to Hong Kong and that. But he ran it fantastic. And unfortunately, when he died, Lay Girls sort of went down because of, I always thought, bad management. If I'd had the money in those days, I would have bought it myself, because it should have been around here for the Olympics. It should have been there for the Olympics, because it would have done phenomenal business.
We've got a shot here of the menu from Lay Girls. It's no longer there. The building isn't even there anymore, is it?
The building's there.
The building's there, but it's now like a pub or something.
No. It's nothing like when I walked out on it years ago. I wouldn't walk back into that building for years, because it used to haunt me. There were good memories there and there were bad memories there. But that's what it used to look like. It's completely different. But underneath, I don't know whether it's in that shot, underneath was the most fabulous dress shop. Like the shops they got at Double Bay now.
In the original...
Yes, in the original building. It was absolutely beautiful.
And it was very much an in place to go, Lay Girls, wasn't it? I mean, like, it wasn't just, the GP that went there. Everybody who was anybody went to Lay Girls, didn't they?
Well, it started off because nobody had ever seen anything like that before. So it was a curiosity thing. When it first opened, it didn't do really good business when it first opened. What made it do good business was one of the first documentaries they ever made on television called The Glittering Mile. And they exposed it on that television show. And then, of course, I remember queues getting into the second show from down the entrance was down there in Roslyn Street, and they'd go right around to the Bourbon, the queues, to get in. But it became a very social thing late at night, especially for the 11:30 show. We'd have people like Rada Penfold from Penfold Wines and all the race crowds all coming up with that. They all had furs on. You'd never see anyone there in jeans or anything like that. They were beautifully dressed, but that was the nightclub era of that time.
And all the celebrities who were visiting town used to come too.
Heaps of celebrities used to come through. If
Shirley Bassey was a regular.
Yes, Shirley.
And Vincent... Don't go and tell us the goss on Shirley Bassey. Go on.
No, I won't go anymore. You'll have to get the new book.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that in a minute. Vincent Price used to come and visit as well.
Vincent Price came, Bette Midler, Cher, oh my God, Shelley Berman, he was a comedian. And then, of course, but see, at that time, like when all those, I was also appearing at Checkers. Dennis Wong wanted me to go into Checkers and go into the productions, and I was doing a thing called Barbarella Strip, which was a movie Jane Fonda did, and of course they all reckon I look like her in those days. I've been told I look like everybody over through the years. They never said you look like Carlotta. It was either Bridget Bardot or Jane Fonda or someone, Catherine Deneuve. All through the years I've had someone else, but they've never said you look like Carlotta.
And you've been called lots of different names too through the year, but one...
Oh, I won't repeat some of the names I've been called.
One of the ones that is of particular interest to me, would you please explain to me why you were called by some of your closest friends the Rattler?
The what?
The Rattler.
The Rattler?
To do with some certain tablets?
The Rattler?
Yes.
I haven't heard that one before.
Well, it's in your bloody book, Dale.
Is it?
Yes.
I'll have to... I've never read my book, actually.
No, it's about the fact that you were taking. So there was a competition. There was a competition to see who could have the biggest breasts, and there was some hormone tablets that were available.
Oh, those. Oh, yes. I was always called the Rattler. Oh, I know what you mean now. Yes, I always had the biggest boobs.
It was almost like a competition who could take the most tablets to get the biggest boobs.
There was a wonderful girl at the Latin Quarter called Big Pretzel. And she used to get the shits because my tits were bigger. But I could never toss those things around.
If there's any doubt over why Carlotta won the competition, this next shot should dispel any. You can see that they're quite ample there.
No, they're tiny there.
Well, they got a lot bigger, didn't they?
They did.
Over the years. After the show, was one of the big things was always you circulating with the audience. You'd all come out and chat to the audience. Did they ask?
Well, I must say, look, that wonderful woman, Sheila Cruz, I was taught by the best. And I dedicated that book to Sheila because Sheila always said to me, and I found out over the years as I became, when I went further on in my career, never believe in your own publicity. You're only as good as your last performance. And she always taught me that, and always mingle with the people. And I've always done that all my life. And I prefer sitting out there talking to them than sitting up here being a bloody idiot.
You had some great idiotic moments backstage during your time at Lay Girls, though, too. Tell us some of the stories. Tell us the story about Laura or Lara and her shoes.
I was always the biggest prankster. I was always the biggest prankster. I was always doing... I suppose that's where I got the comedy flair because, I've always been a happy person. I can't stand people that whinge. See, as much as I love my mother, she drove me out of the house because she never stopped whinging. Didn't matter what it was over. And so I can't stand people that whinge. Life's too short. That's why I love it. And I love laughing, I love having a good joke, and I love having a good time. And I just love talking to people, and I've done it all my life.
And what did you do with these practical jokes that you're talking about? What did you do tell us about Laura and her shoes?
Well, it wasn't just Laura. There was a wonderful impersonator that worked in the show called Peter Moselle, and he was a compere. And I was always getting into trouble from Sammy because he used to do this number called Life Begins at 40. And then he did this other one called Under the Magnolia Tree, and they were monologues. And he's out under the magnolia tree, out there. And he had this branch over his head with, in those days we had props. You got no idea how many props you had on stage. And they had little flowers all over the props. And it was held by a string because you pulled it up when you didn't need it and lowered it down when you needed it. So I cut the string one night and fell on his head.
In the middle of the monologue.
But I was pissed.
What about Kerry's teeth?
No, that was an American. Sammy came up, found this American female impersonator and said, this kid's fantastic. Well, this is how Sammy talked. Oh, kid, well, you see, it's going to be a big star, blah, blah, blah. Ugliest drag queen you've ever seen in your life. And she had a habit of putting her teeth in a glass and before she put doing her makeup, she'd put her teeth in glass and then she'd put the teeth back in the glass, in her mouth, and put the lipstick on. But then she'd take them out for some reason before she went on stage. She must have had sore gums or something, I don't know. So one night she was running late and I hid the teeth. And it's a true story, and she had to go out and do, kiss me, honey, honey, kiss me. Thrill me, honey, honey, thrill me. I nearly got the sack over that.
What about Electra in the bubble bath?
Oh, Electra was petrified of snakes, and she used to do this fabulous striptease act where we had a bubble machine where the pipe went into the back of this fabulous bathtub, and she'd be in there with those beautiful legs up going and with the stick with a sponge on it and all with bows and everything. Everything was done beautiful at Lay Girls. And I threw in a rubber snake. You've never seen a queen get out of a tub so quick.
But they got you back, though, on numerous occasions.
They got me back heaps of time.
Tell us the pickle story.
Well, The what story?
The pickle story, when
The
they called you Pickle.
No, I'm not talking about the pickle story.
Oh, please.
No. I'm not talking about the pickle story. I think you've got that mixed up, the pickle
I
story.
haven't. No, it's got
No,
about
they
the
cut
chocolate
the
cake.
swing on me.
No, about the chocolate cake
The chocolate cake.
that they put laxets in.
Oh, yeah. Oh. That's not a thing you talk about on stage.
Oh, I thought you might have been pickled.
Look what they did. They put laxets to get back at me into the chocolate cake that we used to all plough into after, if there were sweets left over at Lay Girls. And they put laxets into mine. And what I do, I ship myself all the way home.
Oh, it was worth it.
And
All
then
right.
they cut my swing one night. We used to do this number where we had swings and we'd swing out over the audience. And in those days, we had sizzling steaks. And I'm on the swing with my legs going out the front going, ah, and the swing broke.
What, and you
And
landed in the front row
I
of the
still
audience?
got the scar on my ass. So I went into a sizzling steak.
Beautiful. All right, so by 1965, you're now living totally as a woman. Your whole life, you're dressing as a woman all the time. And after 5 years, you've been at Lay Girls a long time, you've been working other things, you've been doing some television guest spots on people's shows, etc., and you've created a bit of a name for yourself here. And you were sort of made an offer to go off to Hong Kong. And it wasn't, as you said before, Sammy was very protective and he wasn't 100% happy initially about you leaving Lay Girls. And in fact, there had been incidents before when previous performers had wanted to leave where he was very unhappy about it. And so you were a bit tentative about whether you'd be able to leave calmly or not, right?
Well, the offer was so good because, I mean, in those days, we never got paid a lot of money in those days. I mean, the management's always made heaps of money, the owners of these clubs and that, but we weren't paid. We were sort of underpaid. We were called a sort of a bastardised act because a lot of the kids mimed. So they didn't find it really talented. They forgot to realise that not every boy could look like that. I mean, we had the best looking female impersonators you'd ever come across because the audience would sit at the front and say, there's no way that's a boy. And they were, am I right? They were just gorgeous. And that's another thing that I fought for during my career. And I really got to that stage where now I had the opportunity, it was all being paid for me, and I went to Hong Kong.
We got a shot here of the show you took to Hong Kong. You went over there, first of all, to set it up, and it was a big change in your life when you got over there, wasn't
Actually, that shot's done opening night.
Yeah?
It was called, I called it the Playgirl Review because I couldn't call it Lay Girls, so I didn't know much about painting names in those days. And they were very good to us, and I was there for nearly 4 years.
And you went blonde while you were there?
Well, I went over there and I looked like everyone else. So I had long black hair. So I thought, oh, God, I'd better go and dye my hair. So I went blonde, and I've been blonde ever since.
And
red occasionally, but...
And the Chinese have that custom of two names, and because of this, they called you
Yes.
Carlotta Bardot.
Well, they thought I looked so much like Bardot when I had blonde hair, and so they did call me... You couldn't have one name, so they called me Carlotta Bardot. And I had very funny times in Hong Kong.
Tell us about the night that you were out with Hal Ludlow, with about the Bardot situation with the two American women.
Well, Hal Ludlow was the most famous couturier in Australia, and he went to Hong Kong and opened a beading factory. And he was living in the Miramar Hotel where we were working, and he used to say, oh, look, Carlotta, I want to dress you up tonight, and I'm going to take you to a place called Gaddy's. It's a famous restaurant. And he dressed me up in the most beautiful gowns and everything, but he said, don't open your mouth because you've got a Balmain accent. So I'd have to sit through these dinners with all these posh people. So I was young and naive and not allowed to open my mouth. And two American women came over. You know, they had more diamonds on them. If they fell into a puddle, they would have drowned. And they came over to me and they said, oh, Miss Bardot, can we have your autograph? And I went to open my mouth, and still got the scar. Hall kicked me under the table and says, "Oh no, she's not talking tonight. She's got a sore throat." Because I would have come out and said, "Oh yeah, love, how are ya?"
And so somewhere in the world, there's two American women who think that they met Bridget Bardot.
I suppose they probably still do.
All right, now, while you were over there was a doctor named Dr. Lee who used to work with silicone implants. And you, all the girls over there discovered this Dr. Lee with the silicone implants, and you decided to become a patient.
Well, I did, yes, because we all wanted to just better ourselves in proportion-wise and everything. And I thought, well, bugger it, I'm going to do it. So I went and did it, and I came out looking like a veranda.
What size did you go up to?
Oh, it was huge. I don't know. I couldn't under it. Well, that's not. They're not the.
No, that's not the completed product. That's probably before shot.
That's a nice shot. That's me now, actually, my size now. But it was just one of those things you didn't know about in those days.
And it was very much the thing at the time too. It was the whole blonde and buxom
well, it
look,
was
wasn't it?
The thing at the time, and we all went and had it done, and the show turned completely different because it turned from wearing bras to topless. And, we'd do in productions, we'd have the Diamante under here and a bit like Las Vegas. And that's when Sammy Lee came back over, and I heard this voice at the back of the room. "Bloody hell, look at my star. Look at her, she's gorgeous. Look at those tits." And I knew it was him because I could tell by the accent, I knew his voice.
You were looking very glamorous, and in fact, at one stage, you were even a model for Sapphire magazine, which was like the equivalent in Hong Kong of Playboy. Ooh! And this is a shot from the Sapphire magazine. And Sammy was right, though. You were absolutely looking stunning, and he, at that point, made a decision that he wanted to bring you back to Australia because this was it. This was going to take you from Hong Kong and bring you back to Australia.
Well, it's the same scenario of anything. They a lot of those people, and Sammy included, they were great bullshit artists, and he said, "I'll come back, I'll make you a big star in Australia." Well, when I came out, I got mobbed at the airport when I came back, and because it hit the papers, Carlotta's come back to Australia, and they said I'd had a sex change, but I hadn't at that time. And then I went to Les Girls, and he had a big opening night with the press and everything. And of course, they'd never seen anyone like us with boobs out to here. And had the magnificent gowns. And when I walked out on stage, everyone laughed.
Why?
Well, they couldn't believe it. Because you didn't see it. Like when we first started off, we all had little boobies.
Yeah.
But, I came out here, I looked like that Sabrina that used to come out here years ago.
Yeah.
And it was just a shock it was a shock to everyone.
The Daily Mirror covered You're Coming Home with a big caption saying Balmain boy becomes beauty, and there's a lovely story about your mum reading the article.
Well, that shot there's taken at the airport when I came back, but what happened with the Balmain beauty, when I did have the actual sex change, a little orderly, we tried to keep it quiet. I wanted to keep it quiet, and a little gay orderly at the hospital went and rang up the newspapers. And of course the hospital had people, because no one had ever heard of it, and it had Balmain boy becomes beauty, and my mother fell off the stool at the RSL.
Because she found out about it when she read it in the paper.
Well, she only found out about it when she read it in the paper, because I tried to keep it quiet.
And that was interesting because I think a lot of people probably, particularly with performers who work in drag and then decide to have a sex change, and I know there's not terribly many of them, but I think people sometimes are under a misconception that they do it for publicity or something like that. And that wasn't the case with you at all. You wanted to keep it totally quiet, didn't you?
No. I just wanted to be me. I wasn't happy with my physical self, so I went and had it done. I had that done personally for me. Unfortunately, it got out into the public. Otherwise, the public would never have even known today, because I didn't want to get out of this business.
And the public, even still to this day, are fascinated about that, aren't they?
I don't know why. I honestly don't know why.
It's not a big thing to you?
No, it's not in a jar.
Oh, boy.
I'm honest.
Whilst I was doing the research for today's show, I actually got to the ABC archives, and I found a segment from Four Corners from 1974. It was broadcast, and this is a video segment from Four Corners from 74 where they interview you and they're talking about the fact that you've had a sex change because it was such big news at the time and it was such an unheard of thing. Let's have a little look at the video segment from Four Corners from 1974 with you discussing this particular issue.
Stage name is Carlotta and she's the star. To find a transsexual who enjoys the limelight is rare. As a result, they're among the most misunderstood groups in the community. Only very young transsexuals have received any lasting help from psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. The only way out, many others become convinced, is through surgery. A small number, like Carlotta, have achieved this result, apparently successfully.
During school, you know, I went through a period of, I know it sounds, I suppose, very ordinary. That I had an ordinary school life like everybody else, but I didn't develop like everybody else. There was always something different about me, you know.
And the idea of an operation, where did that come from?
Well, it took a long time to decide to have that because the reason I decided to have that was, let's face it, I couldn't go back to living a life that I didn't know what was it like. You know, I wouldn't know what it was like to get around dressed as a boy or that anymore. My whole life is, well, you know, I'm a girl, that's it. So I thought I may as well do something about it. And I heard about surgery being done, but I'd seen a lot of operations done that weren't successful. And I wasn't going to have it done unless it was successful, so I waited. And then I finally got it done, and it's been very successful. Well, I'm happy anyway.
New York, 1959, and for Christine Jorgensen, a former American GI who went through the most publicised of all sex changes, a happy ever after conclusion as she applies for a marriage licence. Christine may have been ecstatic, but the American public and medical profession alike were appalled at first by what seemed to be a mutilation by surgery. Since then, attitudes have changed so dramatically that recently a Baltimore court ordered surgeons to perform an identical operation on a 17-year-old boy. The Jorgensen case, however, excited not only public awareness, but left in its wake a formidable list of legal questions. Do you think you ever will marry?
I think if the right guy comes along.
You do have plenty of boyfriends now.
I wouldn't say plenty of boyfriends. I'm not, I really don't get enough time for it at the moment, you know. I go out with guys, yeah, but I don't, relationships I've had, but I if the right man came along, I think I would settle down. He'd have to be terribly understanding, though. That's the part about it.
Well, what do you do when you're confronted with a form which says sex? How do you mark it?
I tick it in between.
Yeah, a round of applause. 1974. And you haven't, I found that tape and I've got a copy of it for you because you haven't seen that for a long time.
No, I haven't seen that for years. I'm going to wet myself in a minute.
Can I ask
I can't believe the thing about getting married. I mean, who wants to be known as Mr. Carlotta? And I'd rather hang on to my money.
You did have in the book though, you talk about a long-standing relationship that you did have. So it's kind of interesting to look back on that because there was a relationship in your life that lasted for 12 years, wasn't there? A significant other.
Yes, there was. It's very private, and I never really talk about it because it was a very happy period. He's got on with his life. He's happy. We're still friends, and at least I can say I've had love once in my life.
Do you think you'll fall in love again?
Oh, no, not now. No, not
Why?
now.
Why?
Because I've got all my girlfriends, they're divorced. There's no way they're getting the house. They can get the gate. See, I know what women go through. We're on the bottom. We've got to wash their underpants. We've got to iron their shirts. We've got to put up with them when they're getting older, sitting in their smoky Dawson chairs, farting all night. No. No, I'm very happy in my little penthouse and got my money in the bank. Thanks. No.
I'm not going to stay. I'm not going to stay on the topic because I know that.
Although I've been looking at you all after. I thought he's a new lay-by.
Oh, please. Oh, where's Jerry Hatch when you need him? I just want to quickly ask, the relationship, even though you are still friends, is no longer, you're no longer together. Was it, how do I ask this tactfully, was it your inability to be able to bear children? Was that a deciding factor?
No, it was, well, you could say that, but the point was that we had a very good relationship. We had a fantastic time, but I wanted him to have children. And I walked away from the relationship. And now he's got children, and I'm very happy for him.
Is it hard for you? Is that a hard thing for you? Not the end of the relationship, but the knowledge of, would you like to have been a mother?
Well, I'd love to have kids, but I can't bear them.
All right, back to the 1970s. We've got an ad here that I'm going to show for a club that you were associated with for quite some time, which was called Carlotta's Place. Tell us about Carlotta's Place. What was that all about? Well, what happened when after Sammy died, Reg Boom's son took it over and Reg's wife, and we moved to Oxford Street, which I always thought was a very bad move. And then I opened, there was 2 rooms, there was the lay girls downstairs, and I opened a room upstairs called Carlotta's Place, and that's when I first started doing one-woman shows. And you're still doing that, aren't you? You're still doing one-woman shows. Well, I did it then, but then I went through many years where I never did it, and then I've started doing them again. And it was around this time also that you had a foray into the world of acting, and you joined the cast of Australia's biggest soapie at the time, Number 96. You remember Number 96? Oh, torture. Tell us, explain to us about what your character, because there was a whole heap of secrecy about you actually being in the show, wasn't there? Well, the whole 16 weeks I was on it, they locked me in a cupboard. Literally. More or less a cupboard, yes, a little room, because they didn't want the press to find out it, because I played a showgirl in it, who was Arnold Feather's girlfriend, which I was really furious about. I wanted to be the other one's girlfriend. I can't remember his name. Don, yeah, I wanted to be Don. Oh, you all know over there, don't you? And in a minute we'll have questions about Ridge and the Bold and the Beautiful, all right. And I was very nervous because I had never done any acting or anything like that before. We'd done sketches on stage, which sketches are a bit, you sort of act in it, but I've never did that. And the most wonderful woman I can thank for that is the late Pat McDonnell, who played Dorry Evans. Yeah. Dorry Evans. And she took me under her wing, and she was just fantastic to me. And I got through it in the end anyway, but it did cause a bit of a scandal. And tell us about the final scene where it was sort of revealed. Well, they didn't know how to do the final scene. They wanted me in a bathtub and standing up. Abigail didn't want that because I had a better body. Anyway, so they had him wrestling me around the floor, and he put his hand up my skirt and he went, "Oh, Miss Ross, Mr. Ross." And it was on the news the next day, and the Fred Noel was screaming, you got no... Because I wasn't as well known then, like to the masses of public. Sure. You also took the shows off to London, and or you worked over in London. Yeah. We've got a shot here of the cast of one of the shows at the Wimbledon Theatre when you played over there. Were British audiences different? What I'm asking is drag and the fascination as big in Britain as it is here in Australia, or is it different? Well, that was a very big venture. There's Simona Monic, who had the Playgirls, who worked with me at Lay Girls. They broke out, and they were the first sort of, I'd say, Priscillas that travelled around
did this club for many years. The casinos in Melbourne, they were down there 6 months of the year. This is when the clubs had the big production shows on, and that was massive. And we went, and they asked me to go over to London with them, and it was the most spectacular show. You couldn't afford to put those sort of shows on today because we had waterfalls on stage and everything. And the funniest night was there that just before the show started on opening night, you got a little patch behind the curtain like you can look through. And it's got a gauze thing on to see who's in the audience. And one of the kids ran and had a look to see all the crowd coming in. It was a big crowd. And it was at the Wimbledon Theatre in Wimbledon. And they had all these flowers up in the box thing up the side, like the royal box. And they came back and they said, oh, there's royalty in. There's royalty in. Look at all the flowers and everything. When the curtain up, it was bloody Danny LaRue. And we were all sweating backstage and excited. And so, we were all practising to go. Then it came out, it was bloody Danny LaRue.
I think Danny probably would have enjoyed being curtsied to like that, wouldn't he?
She waved like the Queen too.
The 70s also provided you with some work as a professional model, didn't it? You did work for various different photographic studios.
Well, some of the early black and white shots there, and I was photographed by a wonderful photographer called Alan Nye, and these were the days of Maggie Tabber and all them were big models, and I did a commercial thing for Sheridan Sheets. There was me and another person called, we called Black Leslie, who was just gorgeous. And some of the models got bitchy and put us into the company, saying that we were what we were. And they pulled all the ads. But I did quite a bit of photography work in those days. But
was that a different sort of discipline to what you'd been used to?
Well, we were excited because it was something different that we'd never ever done. But a lot of the models got very bitchy about it. I suppose they didn't like the competition for the fact that we weren't the same proportions as them.
All right, 70s and 80s, you spent lots of time touring because you took lay girls out on the road and you went everywhere, didn't you, with lay girls? Really just taking it all over the place, didn't you?
I've seen as much of Australia as Slim Dusty has. I've been, it's like that song, I've been everywhere, man. We went out on that road, we were in buses. It was the most hardest thing I've ever done, but I did that for something like 15 years on and off. And the country people were just fantastic. Absolutely. That's why I got a bit annoyed when the movie Priscilla came out, where they asked the director how you came up with the idea, and he said he dreamt it. Because we'd been doing it 20 years before.
It really basically could well have been your life story, couldn't it?
In
a sense.
Everyone comes up to me, and I mean, Rebel Penfold, who produced it, and she's got a wonderful movie out about a mother at the moment. She basically told me later on that she did base it on, the lay girls type thing. Look, I thought the movie was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've got a copy of it at home. I just love it. But I just got cranky that the kids who'd worked hard all those years didn't get the accolades that they should have got for that movie.
Do you think it helped drag as a profession, though?
I think it reboosted. I think it boosted it back up again. But, there's one thing about Australian audiences. I mean, who'd ever have thought 25 years ago that the football show, they'd be getting into drag. Who'd ever thought that? And it's happened. So we've done something for the community.
You did lots for communities in the bush, actually, because you got up to all sorts of mischief when you were out on tour, didn't you? There's a photo here taken of you backstage. I love that. Just look at the little writing on the mirror. Carlotta is a piss pot and the star sigh. I think that's gorgeous. But you got up to all sorts of mischief on tour, didn't you?
Well, you got to realise
things.
Well, you got to realise that we'd go out on the road, and sometimes we'd do 7-hour drives of a daytime. We'll come into these dusty towns, and then go and have showers and get dressed up and then go and do the show that night. And then you're back on the road again at 7 o'clock the next morning going to another town. And it was a very hard slog. It really was.
So it was like
and I
letting
take my
down your
hat
hair.
off to all the kids that did it with me for years. And so we made our own fun. We had to, you know. I mean, I've always said they did it sort of more or less. It wasn't actually like in the movie Priscilla. It was a bit overdone. I wish I would have had a bus like that. You know, and I mean that's what drove me out of it in the end, because you know having a bus for 11 drag queens, they're like the Muppets on heat.
So it's not what you're saying is that it wasn't.
Oh no, I was
necessarily
ripping
glamorous.
my hair out in the end, because I mean, you know, that everyone, they get bored, or they start towards the end they get bored, they're whinging, and so the whinging came back into it again. And I went, nah, stop, that's it.
Tell us the story about the Christmas job you did for Eric Dare, where he told you to meet him for a secret destination job.
Well, Eric Dare had a very good sense. Eric Dare was Reg Livermore's manager, and he loved practical jokes. So he said, look, the girls have just done a tour. I've got a great gift for you for Christmas. He said, I'm going to fly you up the coast, and he said, where they're putting on a big party on this property for you. So we all arrive out at the airport, and it's one of those old DC-10s. It had cane furniture in it. You got no idea. And we're all in this plane, and I mean, we flew past the heads, and I mean, you could nearly reach down and touch the heads. But anyway, we all got stuck. We had eskies on board. And some of the girls were nervous about flying and said, oh, let's get pissed. Anyway, it's a party. We don't have to work tonight. We're going to a party. So we all got stuck into the grog. And we arrived at this place, and then a big Greyhound bus picked us up. And then we drove through the bush, and then we came up on this hill, and there was these two old tin sheds. When we got off the bus, the place was full of miners. And they all thought there was a whole load of those sort of girls coming for a Christmas party for them.
The ones who you pay for a slightly different reason.
And so we all get off the bus, and, you know, we're all glamorised off. And the way we heard one of them said, oh, they're blokes for about half an hour. They're sitting over there, we're sitting here over here. And about 4 hours later, what a fabulous night. The plane came back like that.
Drag queens hanging from trees and all sorts of things.
It was very funny.
So you really brought Vegas to the bush during those times when you were taking the shows around, and it really was, you did try and create that Vegas style, because it was something that in the cities, in the capital cities, people got to see, but in the small country towns, they'd never seen anything like that before.
We took the lot out into the bush, and they were very... I've still got friends in Central Australia, Queensland, Western Australia, Kalgoorlie, that I get cards from, and I correspond with them, that they've just been wonderful. When I did the thing for 60 Minutes, they followed us to Broken Hill. And look, they were just wonderful people, and they'd never had, like, they'd had country and western singers like Slim Dusty and other entertainers that go in, but they never had the big scale of these big production numbers.
So it was.
And we travel in a bus and a big truck and a couple of cars, and off we'd go.
You talk in the book about the funny stories, the worst of all being Port Augusta.
I never want to go there again.
What happened?
Oh, just full of dust.
Which didn't mix well with feathers.
No. As soon as I got back to a greener area, I was washing feathers for a week. I had all red dust through it.
And you say that the tours of New Zealand were also great fun?
Oh, the New Zealanders were fantastic. I mean, I just laughed. So the first time I went over there, I got a bit of a Maori welcome. They're going, comedy, which I got very excited over, as you can imagine. Which at that time I didn't know what that meant.
But it looked good to you.
Oh, it looked great. I said, I'm going to have a good time in this country.
Carlotta, you're known for your quick wit that we're seeing now, and that's always been something that's been great for you when you're comparing. Everyone knows you mostly ad-lib when you're comparing. You don't necessarily always work from a script. How did the whole comparing thing start for you?
Well, it started, I was not the first compere of lay girls. It just, I was sort of more or less thrown into it where the first three compares had left and done all that. And of course, Sammy always knew I had a funny side of me. He said, get out there and do it. And I started doing it then and never looked back.
And what happens, I wanted to ask, what happens when, because I'd like to know for my own purposes, what happens when you've got a real smart aleck or someone who wants to sort of talk back at you in the audience? You've got someone, which is not going to happen in this case. You can see this poor guy, certainly not, you're not going to wake him up in a hurry, but you, because of the style that you work in, you must often have people that want to sort of take you on, you know, from the audience.
Well, in the early days they did, you know, you'd always get a smart ass in the audience. But I learned to handle that. I think that was Balmain training too that came out. You know, I thought, look, I've been look, for many years I got put down in my career, and I've got put down by general public as well. You know, the names I've been called over the years. Actually, and you know, occasionally it may still happen. It happened actually the other night. There was a certain football team that was celebrating, and I was walking past with two elderly lady friends of mine, and they turned around and they said, oh, Carlotta, and they said something very, very hurtful, show us you, and blah, blah, blah. And I turned around, I just stuck my finger up and I said, remember what happened to the Bulldogs? And remember I'm still on TV. And they shut up. And the doormen all come out of these clubs and said, you're unbelievable. But you just learn. Look, my life's too short to worry about idiots. If they don't know who I am and they don't accept me, I couldn't give a damn.
Do you feel fear?
I think I've paid my dues in this business.
Do you feel fear?
No, I don't feel it at all. Because I'm too happy. You're looking better in that pink shirt.
I must ask you too, do you think drag is different today? I mean, there's a different style of drag performer today.
It's like if you go to the gay clubs today, they're wonderful talents, but I think the real glamour ones. That's why I'm bringing it back this year. Hopefully, I'm hoping that it's not that successful that I'm going to be doing it for another 3 or 4 years, because I mean, there's only so much. I haven't had anything done from the neck up yet. And I said, you know, I don't want to come. I saw that woman on TV last night. I mean, my
Joan
God.
Rivers, yes.
Oh, my God. Who wants to speak out of your navel?
I want to just trip back in time
That's
for a second.
That's for you, Lola.
For this next shot, it was taken at a very special celebration for you. It was your 40th birthday ball, and you really had the biggest ball that Sydney has ever had, didn't you?
I did. I had the biggest... you couldn't get a limousine in town that night. Couldn't get a limousine.
Everybody was there.
Yes, yes. And then after that ball, I got called in by the Royal Commission.
Oh, hang on. No, why?
You
Why?
didn't know that, did you?
No. Oh, tell us,
Because they thought that the Premier at that time was at my party, and they wanted to know who paid for my party.
Ah.
And he wasn't there.
Who was there?
I'm not saying.
Oh, okay.
But everyone was there. It was a fantastic night. And we had it at before it turned into the Jewish Museum, we had it it was a big ballroom up there in Darlinghurst Road. And I had figures all around the room, all dressed up as showgirls, dummies from windows. It was spectacular, ice carvings. And my God, it was like at the end of a Mardi Gras night at the end of the night. There were bodies everywhere.
What time did you get home?
I think I got home about 7.
That's a good party.
Yes, with trucks load of prezzies.
Oh, that's the way we like it. The 90s, of course, has seen, in the 90s and into the 2000s, as your life has become busier than ever. You had the release of your first autobiography, He Did It Her Way. We've got a shot of the front cover of that. That was hugely successful. You had 2 print runs of that, and you just can't get it anywhere. We were talking about it backstage, and the only place you can get it is from the library.
You can get it at the library, and I did a lot of stuff for the National Archives, the history on drag, and you can get 6 hours on tape if you want to listen to me for 6 hours, because it's the longest experience I've ever been. It was the longest thing I've ever done in my life. You know, sitting down in Canberra with 2 boring librarians trying to get your life together. I mean, you should have done it, because I've been happier doing this than when I had to do that. And but it was great to be asked to do that. But the new book that I've got coming out next year is I told you backstage what I wanted to call it, which I can't put in print. So it's called Carlotta, I'm Not That Kind of Girl, but it's the truth. And I think I'm going to have to leave town for a while when it comes out. So it's a real Kitty Kelly book.
Yeah, so we can expect more juice in the second instalment than we got in the first one?
Well, let's put it this way. We've got about 8 lawyers working on this one.
Seriously?
Yeah, because we've got very bad libel things in this country as far as bringing out something in print. If I did it offshore, it'd probably come in.
So do we get any sneak preview?
Do we get a sneak preview?
Of
no.
One of the bits of gossip? One of the bits of nothing?
No, I can't. I'm under contract.
When's it coming out?
It's coming out probably Mother's Day next year.
And what a perfect gift. You're co-writing the book with one of your panellists from Beauty and the Beast, Prue McSween, is helping you with it.
Prue McSween's helping, and you know what her mouth's like, so the book's going to be very juicy.
Prue's name actually brings me to the last thing I want to talk to you about, which is Beauty and the Beast, because it's been a big part of your life. Are you still enjoying it? What are you up to, 6 years?
Look, I've had the most wonderful experience on that show. It's I thought I got quite shocked when they asked me to do it originally, because I took Rose Hancock's place when she got sacked. They'd been going it for about 3 weeks when it first started, and I've been in it ever since. And Foxtel have just been wonderful to me over it. And I get a lot of mail from people saying that, well, a lot of the girls on that show go on with a load of bullshit. You know, and they lose the plot. I just say it as it is. I mean, I don't go on it pretending to be an intellect or anything like that. If I've got a question, it's when it comes to the medical things or women's side things, I've said, well, I don't have those problems.
Are the questions legit?
The questions are very legit.
They're not just sort of some
of them
script writer.
have to be changed because some of them are really rude. No, there's no made-up letters. I can assure you of that. No, you couldn't do a show like that with made-up letters.
You film ahead of time quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah, we film about 3 or 4 shows. Like the ones you're probably seeing today would have been done about 3 shows ago.
And after today, actually, after you finish here, you're flying on the 11th of September up to Tweed Heads, because you're doing Beauty and the Beast live at Tweed Heads.
We're doing we're doing Twin Towns
with a live audience.
With a live audience, yeah.
When can we expect to see that on the screen?
Probably in about 3 weeks.
And some of the girls are already up there
and we've
now?
got the winner of the competition. They've been running a competition, Be a Beauty for a Day.
Uh-huh.
And
anybody enter that? Yes, somebody up there did.
Some of the videos were funny. Some of the videos were funny, but it's the first one we've done this year, actually, live in the audience.
I think they should do one here. Don't you? Dennis, can we organise that?
I've already been approached about it.
Oh, good. Okay, fair enough. Fantastic. I'll be here. What I want to ask is, because we've had Ita here as a guest before, and we've had Jeannie here as a guest before, and you're our third official beauty.
I love Jeannie.
She was great the day Jeannie was
woman.
here. She is the most sincere, beautiful woman.
She is so funny. I mean, you want to see her at 6 o'clock in the morning, though. How'd she look at that hour?
She looked great. Didn't she? She looked great.
I walk in that room, she goes, "Oh, Carlotta, you look so beautiful. You darling." It's the only real woman I know that should have balls and should be doing what I'm doing.
Oh, please. What I didn't get the chance to ask Ida and Jeannie, and I want to ask you, is what? Oh, this is going to be incredible. I can't wait. I wish I was down there watching this. What really happens between the commercial breaks? That's what I want to know. What does everyone just sort of sit there and go bored, or do you continue the arguments?
Well,
or what happens?
I'll give you one tip. In my new book, it's called The Green Room. Do you? What is it, love? No, you're not allowed. No, you're not allowed to have cigarettes. No, you're not at Beauty and the Beast.
Not at a television station.
No, not even in the green room. No, not in the green room. No, green room is where you have coffee and you go and all mingle.
Yeah.
You're right, in a certain extent, but you can't have cigarettes in there. And we all sit around and we talk.
And does it get bitchy?
Oh, darling, you could do a sitcom on that
Really?
green room. Yes.
Do you prefer Stan or Doug?
Do I prefer Stan or Doug? I got asked this on Bert Newton, and I said, how can you compare the two? Because they're completely two different people. Completely two different people. I think it'd be unfair to compare the two. I mean, it depends on what you're into. If you're into, I suppose a lot of men would like Stan because he was such an aggravating arsehole. But I was big enough to put him back in his place.
How do you really? I mean this quite seriously, because I've heard varying things. I've heard people say, oh, Stan is an awful person. I've heard other people say, oh, look, it's just all an act. He's really a pussycat. He's a nice guy.
Stan is a wonderful person in real life. He does a lot of work that people don't know that he does for different charities and things. I got a lot of respect for Stan Simoning, and I've got a lot of respect for Doug Mulray as well. I think Doug Mulray, unfortunately, has been a hidden talent that we haven't seen for a long time because he's a very witty man. And
he's certainly riding high now. We were talking
I just love
backstage.
him, I love him of a morning. You go on the set and he's looking at the camera and he goes, he's hanging on to those last strands.
What about the girls that are no longer on the show? Jan Murray, for a start. Do you miss Jan? Oh, well, don't fight.
Well, I had a great time with Jan in Byron Bay. Yeah.
Oh, tell us.
Yeah, well, she lived in Byron Bay, and she invited me up for a weekend up there. She said, oh, Carlotta, she said, you're going to have a wonderful time. Have you been to Byron Bay? It's like going back to the 60s. Because she took me shopping in the afternoon. When I came out at the end of the shops, all those funny smells, I was dilly-lily. I was going like that. I wanted to go home and eat the fridge. I think it was called marijuana. Anyway, and she had a party that night, and she got me really drunk. And I think I drank about a bottle of scotch, and she woke me up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go bushwalking. And so we came, and we got in the middle of the bush. This is true. Came to a bridge. She said, oh, let's cross that bridge. And I said, okay. She said, I've always wanted to do what the boys do, Carlotta. I said, what's that? She said, pee off the end of a bridge. I said, do you want a straw? Next minute, she dropped her pants in front of me. I was shocked. And then I turned my back, being the lady that I am, and she screamed. I ran over. I said, what's the matter? She said, oh, I think I just pissed in a pink canoe. I said, that's not a pink canoe, that's your reflection. Whew. Yes, I miss Jan.
Speaking, going from the sublime to the ridiculous, the lovely Maureen Duval.
I miss Maureen very much. I think she's such a lady, and you never know. Maureen might be back if it goes ahead next year. She might be back next year.
That was going to be my next question. How much longer did you...
She's very excited, Maureen Duval, at the moment, because she's got 3 sons, and 2 of them, their wives are having... one's given birth this year, and the other one's... She's going to be the grandmother. She's been waiting to be a grandmother. So she's had a wonderful year off being a grandmother, which I think is fabulous.
That was I was going to ask you, and you just preempted it slightly there. What's the situation? How much longer are you under contract with Beauty and the Beast, and will it be returning next year? How much longer is the show going for? Do we know?
You never know we never know with TV. TV is a completely different thing to the shows. That's why I've always had my shows as my backup. It's not my main thing, TV, and we'll know probably halfway through Christmas if it's going back next year. It's certainly, I think it's great for women as a show because it gives them a view. And there's not many shows on TV. It's always male-dominated. And I think it's great in that. I hope it doesn't go. I hope it does go for another year, because I want to put another wing on my house.
Well, as long as you're still on it next year, I'll be watching, and I'm sure lots of you will too, yes? All right. Just to finish up, before we ask the questions from the audience, I just want to ask you about, very quickly, a few famous people. Peter Allen, first of all. Now, a little bit of a tale in your book. Tell us about your association with Peter.
He was a very dear friend, great mate, and I think one of the best talents that Australia ever produced. And I miss his songwriting.
But you were more than friends for a while, though, too, weren't you?
That's nobody's business.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on, Ricky May.
Ricky May was my best mate ever. I just adore that man. He was just... I met Ricky when I was very young. I used to go down the Latin Quarter. I loved him and Norman Erskine. And I just think that... I miss Ricky very, very much.
I think everybody does. Eartha Kitt.
Eartha Kitt, unbelievable, that woman. Unbelievable. She is a tigress. She is a tigress.
Because she used to pop into Lay Girls a lot when she was out here touring, didn't she?
She loved it. Because we had one of the kids that used to take her off. She was... I met her in London too. I saw her one-woman show in London when I was over there. Great woman.
Danny LaRue, you mentioned Danny earlier. Danny, of course, has spent a lot of time out here in Australia. This is a shot of you and Danny. Do you...
I've had some mad... Well, Danny was my idol when I was a kid.
Yeah?
I always, and I was so excited the night I met him in London, and we became very good friends over the years. Boy, have I taken him home on some drunken nights.
Do you still keep in contact with Dan?
Yes, I get a card from Danny, or I'll ring him up. He's doing a lot of the ship stuff now.
Can we expect to see him back out in Australia anytime soon?
I don't think so, no.
Right, okay. Abe Saffron.
Very nice man.
Would you like to elaborate on that comment?
Very nice man.
Okay.
Have you seen 6 Foot Under? Don't ask.
The last person I want to ask you about, Fred Nile.
Well, you never hear much about him now, do you? So guess who's the winner?
Do you have any respect for the man?
Look, the man does what he does. I mean, he's a religious man. I'm not going to... I didn't come across his views. He nicknamed me in, I think it was the early 60s, the Queen of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so it sort of... Look, I don't get into the political side of things. He's got a job to do, but he never got over the top of me, and he never will.
Have you...
Not that I'd ever want him on top of me.
Have you met the man?
Actually, you want to know something? I've never met the man. I've been on floats in Mardi Gras, and he's been there with the placards and things at the side. But no, I've never met the man. I don't wish to either.
Well, what I've done today is No, I'm not going to bring him on,
Is he my special guest?
No. No, what I've done is I just wanted to show this final shot. I've had this shot framed and we've sent it to him courtesy of Canterbury Helston Park RSL. He'll receive this in his office later today as a special memento. I thought he might like to have that sitting on his desk. Do you think that's a nice idea? All right, let's finish up before we leave today, Carlotta, because you're going to come down and sign autographs and meet people. We've got the questions from the audience. Enid Ingle. Carlotta, have you had children and what are they doing?
I think I've answered that one before.
Yes, I think we know that that's probably not the case, but Enid, you'll still get tickets. All right, where are we? This one comes to us from, it's from Jealous. From Jealous. I celebrated my 30th birthday at Lay Girls 30 years ago and you were celebrating your birthday too. My question is, how do you manage to stay so young and glamorous and how do you keep your boobs looking so perky?
Plenty of scotch.
All right, next one now from E. Ellison. Where did you get that lovely white pantsuit you wore last time you were here? Somebody's trying to raid your wardrobe now.
I still
Do you remember
wear
it?
that white pantsuit. I bought that in a shop. I didn't have that made. I bought that in a shop in Adelaide. It was Ooh La La or something.
Fashion tips with Carlotta.
They sell jewellery here, but in Adelaide they sell clothes as well.
Fabby, all right. This one from Robin Attard. Now this is interesting because I meant to talk about this. Where can I get a copy of your book, He Did It Her Way? It's out of print. Now, a couple of people, when I've been talking about doing this show, and they've said, I've tried to buy that book everywhere. We mentioned it's in the library, but you literally can't. You don't even have a copy of it.
No, and I'm very happy to say it never went to the cheap bracket. Well, it never went into a basket as a special. It just sold out, and we just decided to do the new one.
And so it'll be out.
Well, they approached me about doing the new one.
It'll be out for Mother's Day.
Yeah, but you can get the old one in. I don't even have a copy of the old one. You've got a copy in your bag out the back.
Yeah. And I think that some people here have brought them along for you to sign. So you'll be able to, if you have one, it's a precious item, collector's item these days, and you'll be able to get Carlotta to sign it for you before you leave today. Who is the this from Roma Wybron. Who is the biggest bitch out of the beauties?
Who's the biggest bitch out of the beauties? I wouldn't. I'm not saying that until the series ends this year.
That's diplomatic. All right. Okay, this is a little bit of a serious one, I guess, an important one for today. What are your thoughts about September the 11th?
Well, I think that it was a tragedy. I think you mentioned it earlier. It has been rammed down our throats all the time. Look, it happened, but we're not allowed. We've got to get on with our lives because we can't let these bastards defeat us. That's it. But you've got to get on with your lives. You can't allow them to see you being defeated. That's why I'm flying this afternoon. But I'm from Balmain. I'm taking a spanner with me on board.
That question was from Helen Eva Raffa. So, Helen, you've also won tickets. And our last question from Denise Hodgson. Those people who I've mentioned, you can see Debbie, our beautiful hostess, at the end of the show. She will organise the tickets for you, your 2 complimentary tickets to Tony Lamond on the 9th of October. This last one I love. Do you remember the Crypt nightclub in Queen Street, Auckland in 1976? I met you in the toilets. Do you remember it?
Probably, but I've probably got my hair. You haven't got yours anymore, have you? No, I don't remember the Crypt. The Crypt where?
The Crypt nightclub in Auckland.
Crypt nightclub in Auckland. Was it the ladies or the men's toilet?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fabulous having Carlotta with us today.
Thank you, everyone.
Hope you've enjoyed the show. Next month, as I said, Tony Lamond. In November, we have Little Patty with us, the original blonde-headed, stompy-wumpy, real gone surfer girl, Little Patty. And then in December, for a bit of a laugh for Christmas, the wonderful Lucky Grills will be with us. Tickets for all those shows can be booked on the way out. And book your tickets for the 14th of December for Carlotta. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you, everybody.
The wonderful legend of Lay Girls, Carlotta!
Thank you. Love you. Thanks, darling.